My name is Raj Mehta. I'm a therapist. Have my own therapy center called Serenity Therapy Center in Rochester Hills, Michigan. Worked at Brighton Hospital for 3.5 years. Oh my God, cool. All right, very good. So with regards to what I do, I'm going to kind of go through my slides, but here we go. We're going to use the use of interactive cards in the treatment of PTSD, treatment of trauma. Has anyone ever seen these types of visual aid cards before? No one's familiar with this. Okay, so these are called interactive cards. So a little bit of a background. One of my clients came to me and said, you must use these cards to help people. I had no idea what these cards were to be used for. I had no idea what the format was. So I went to Amazon.com and I bought them. Okay, I'm going to pass them through. You guys can have a look at these cards. As I began looking at these cards, I noticed something very interesting. They're able to show different types of experiences, emotions, and feelings. So Sharon Eckstein, who is the person who illustrated those cards, I feel is an actual genius. And they have a program called Parts Work. Anybody familiar with Parts Work and the idea behind that? Okay, so I had no idea what this was. I only had the cards. I never even read this book or anything, right? And so as I began working with people, I noticed that a lot of my clients have issues. I'm known as the go-to guy to get your kid off of heroin. Has anyone ever seen that TV program, Intervention? Okay, so I do intervention. So I have clients that are professional football players, former congressmen, CEOs of corporations, 2 chiefs of surgeries from various hospitals, and I have clients that are on food stamps and on disability. I have a spectrum of people, even like one famous rapper client is my client. So I meet with all kinds of people, and treating heroin addiction tied me back into going back to trauma. Is that making sense? And so with regards to sexual abuse, PTSD, all this kind of stuff, this stuff has touched my life very closely. My sister was raped when she was 17 years old. So I have a personal interest in helping people that have been harmed by trauma. Is that making sense? So as we go through this, you notice I have a very personal identification with this. So meeting with lots of people and treating them, oftentimes issues of childhood abuse would come up. Oftentimes, you guys know that 80% of all IV female drug addicts have an extensive sexual abuse history. You guys know about that? Imagine really bad things happened to me in my childhood, right? And someone hands me a very, very powerful painkiller. I put that in my arm, and all that emotional and psychological pain goes away. Then the guy says, don't do that every day, or you're going to get hooked. Well, guess what happens? Is that making sense? So I'm also known as a person that helps with regards to families. I help the families get through the addiction portion and get them to stop enabling and get through their denial as well. And so we're going to touch on Stockholm Syndrome and the use of these interactive cards in treating PTSD and trauma. And so Stockholm Syndrome is a syndrome. It is not an illness, but it is a paradigm, a model that we're going to use to illustrate an experience or a way of being or a way of thinking or a way of dealing with anxiety. PTSD, sexual trauma, physical trauma, this all ties back into anxiety. And so when we talk about helping people, we've got to find ways to have them deal with their anxiety and come to terms with those experiences. So having gone through the cards, I'll give you my first kind of like case example of how this began to happen. One of my sister's friends from high school had a daughter who basically changed like a light switch on off into like wearing black lipstick, began cutting herself, began using drugs, and she got very high one night and they took her to the emergency room. In the emergency room, Danielle will call her, Danielle calls my sister and says, Nikki overdosed. They're like, wow, what's going on with Nikki? So a psychiatrist in the ER met with Nikki and determined that she had childhood paranoid schizophrenia. Does anybody know how rare childhood paranoid schizophrenia is? With no family history, right? So I talked to Danielle on the phone. I said, how much time did the psychiatrist spend with this young lady in making that diagnosis? And she says, 5 minutes. And I said, tell him he's an idiot and tell him I said so. I said, I want to talk to Nikki. So Nikki was telling the psychiatrist that she had been experiencing paranoid feelings or paranoid worries about other people trying to hurt her and her family. And she was afraid that people were out to get her. And on top of that, she basically was telling her family that she was having like hearing voices, but not very specific about what the voices were. Is that making sense? So my first session with Nikki, I noticed that she had been cutting herself. And I said, Nikki, many of the young ladies that I work with that cut themselves often have these bad things happen to them. And I use an example of that. And I go, Nikki, if you feel comfortable, tell me about what happened to you when you were younger. What happened to you recently? Any bad things? She wouldn't open up. So what's the next step? I happen to have these cards. So I said, Nikki, go through each one of these cards and please pick out 3 or more cards that represent what that bad experience that happened to you looked like and felt like. She pulls out 3 cards as we go through, and I go, it's very interesting, Nikki, because those are the same types of cards that people pull out when bad things have happened to them, right? So I said, if you feel comfortable, do you want to tell me about what possibly could have happened to you? And she goes, well, I have a crush on a boy who's 18 years old, and I was only 15 at the time. And my mom said I couldn't go out with him and go on a car date, and he was having a birthday party. So I said, please continue. She says, well, I wanted to go to his birthday party, but he said, here's the deal. Why don't you sneak out of your window, I'll pick you up, take you to my house, and you can be at my birthday party. So, of course, Nikki does that, comes to the birthday party, and there's 3 other boys there drinking downstairs in the basement. As they begin to drink, they begin to force Nikki to drink as well and take some Xanax as well. And before you know it, she's intoxicated. Then she says, they made me do these really bad things to them. And I go, Nikki, I'm so sorry to hear that. She goes, they made me do these other things to them. And I said, Nikki, I'm so sorry to hear that. She goes, but then I heard a noise up at the top of the stairs. And I go, really? And she goes, yeah, and I saw a man's image in his body up there, and he began walking down the stairs into the basement. I go, so what were you thinking? She goes, well, I thought, oh my God, I'll be okay. And I screamed at the man, I said, please help me, please help me. I go, well, what did the man do? She goes, he walked to the bottom of the stairs and just watched. I'm like, wow, I didn't see that coming. Opportunity to be a hero. So I said to Nikki, I'm not sure if this is therapeutic or not, Nikki, if I would have been there, I would have thrown all those guys through a window. Nikki, I want to apologize to you for having had that experience. It's not fair to you what happened to you. You were a victim. Nothing that you did, said, acted, or dressed like warranted that kind of mistreatment. And I'm so sorry you had to go through that. Not all men are bad. There's good men that are out there. I just wish there was one there in that basement that evening. Is that making sense? So we began talking about this issue, and I said, Nikki, when you saw the psychiatrist, what did you say to him? Well, he asked me if I felt that people were out to get me. And I go, so what did you say? She goes, well, after all those really bad things happened to me, the boys told me if I told anybody about this, they would kill me and my family. And they also told me that because I was drinking underage, they would call the police, and I'd get an MIP. I could never go to college. And she begins to cry. I go, none of that is true, and you're safe. And on top of that, that will never happen to you again. And she began to cry, and we began to talk. Then I said to her, to the next level, I said, Nikki, if you feel comfortable, I want you to start working with me on a weekly basis about these and other issues. And the great story is that Nikki is doing absolutely fantastic. She was a runner-up on a Voice of America, that contest for singing, and she's got a full-time job and going to college part-time. So that kind of ties you into what I do and how I do that. All right? Is that making sense? So the issue with the psychiatrist was these boys had threatened to kill her and her family. When they asked her, do you have any fears of other people that are out to get you? And she's like, yeah, they're trying to hurt me and my family. Who are they? I can't tell you, right? And then also when they asked her about, do you hear voices? She was referring to the voices at nighttime when she would hear them saying to her, if you tell anyone, we will kill you. Those were the voices she was referring to. And if this man would have spent a little bit more time with her, he could have gotten that information out. That's what really frustrates me, is that we have this time limit on meeting with people and diagnosing them so quickly rather than getting to the root of the cause. And for me, whenever I see cutting, I automatically go to, that means sexual abuse, right? And so that's what that looks like. Just so you know what I deal with. This was a text message from another client before I got her sober, and she was in a lot of pain. Her boyfriend raped her and then began to brand his name on her bottom and began to brand her on a weekly basis. She had brand marks all over her arms. She became a heroin addict. You can pass that on through. I want to make stuff real. so you guys can understand what I'm dealing with and how it feels. I mean, you guys probably work in the same areas, but I want to make this really, really, I don't know, something that you can understand and identify with. Is that helpful? So I'm licensed to kill addiction on site, and I help families, and that's pretty much straightforward. I've written a book on addiction to help people, and that's pretty much straightforward, and we're going to move on. So talking about Stockholm Syndrome, has anyone ever heard the term Stockholm Syndrome before? So it kind of ties back into the experience of the people that were in a bank vault in Stockholm, Sweden. So Stockholm Syndrome is a psychological phenomena in which the hostage or the victim expresses sympathy, empathy, and even positive feelings towards the captors, right? Sometimes to the point of defending, caring for, and identifying with them. These feelings are considered irrational and illogical in light of the danger, mistreatment, and risk endured by the victims. Stockholm Syndrome can be seen in the form of traumatic bonding, which does not necessarily require a hostage scenario. It describes strong emotional ties that develop between two or more persons where one person is the abuser and the other person is the victim. And what you see there is actually a photograph of the bank vault in Stockholm Syndrome, and those are the people that claim to have had Stockholm Syndrome. So what is Stockholm Syndrome, right? And why do people have this reaction? So Freud, from a Freudian standpoint, from a Freudian paradigm, one commonly used hypothesis to explain the effect of Stockholm Syndrome is based on Freudian theory. It suggests that the bonding is the individual's response to the trauma of being victimized. Identifying with the aggressor is the one way the ego can defend itself from further harm. When a victim accepts the same values, identifies with, connects emotionally with, and takes care of the aggressor, they cease to be perceived cognitively as an extreme threat. Is that making sense? So I'm going to need a volunteer. The Stockholm handout's been passed out, right? Can somebody just read the first paragraph, please? Need a volunteer? Thank you so much. Yep, the first paragraph. Yep. That's close enough. So let me ask you guys a question. If you were held for 6 days in a bank vault against your will, right? No shower, no good food, someone's got a pistol to your head, right? You got all this anxiety, all this fear. Your parents, your family members are out there worried about you, crying about you. Under those circumstances, when you're released, what would be a healthy response to the police once you're out of that predicament? What should those captives have said to the police? Lock those people up forever. They ruined my life. They made my family cry. I probably got PTSD and got to go see Raj for 2 years, right? Okay? All right, I need a volunteer to read the next paragraph, please. Fortune favors the bold. Thank you.
People suffering from Stockholm Syndrome come to identify with and even care for their captors in a desperate attempt to make sense of their mistreatment. It occurs in the most psychologically traumatic situations, often hostage situations or kidnappings, and the effects usually do not end when the crisis is over. In these cases, victims continue to defend and care about their captors even after they escape captivity.
Mm-hmm.
Symptoms of Stockholm Syndrome have also been identified in the slave/master relationship, in battered spouse cases, and in members of destructive cults and in addiction.
Yeah, the house slave loves his master. So back in the days of slavery, who were the abolitionists? I always ask my clients this question, only half of them know the answer. Who were the abolitionists back in the days of slavery? Well, they were Christians, right? That were completely against slavery, and they had really good rational arguments and could cite, Bible verses to say that slavery was completely wrong. These people were part of the Underground Railroad and risked their freedom and their lives helping slaves escape to Canada. They even helped buy slaves their freedom. So who do these abolitionists really begin to piss off over a period of time? Slave owners, right? They got a good hustle, a good racket here, making money off the mistreatment of people, right? And these abolitionists are making sense, they're logical, and they're spiritual. So at some point during this process, some of the slave owners came up with a very clever way of fighting against the abolitionists. They would invite a house slave to a podium in a town square. They'd say to the abolitionists, other people, you're so sure you're against slavery. You're so thinking that slavery is wrong, but what do you even know about it? You've never even been a slave, never even owned a slave. Let's ask this man right here how he feels about slavery. So the house slave comes to the podium, and what does he say out loud in front of hundreds of people? I love my master. I love slavery. Please don't get rid of it. Where would I go? Where would I stay? Where would I sleep? You know, I got a good life. I eat his scraps. I wear his clothes. This is a really good deal. Your first reaction when you think that and hear that is, well, he has to say those things because if he doesn't, he's going to go back and get a beating. That's not actually true. What's happened is he's internalized his own oppression. And so if someone was to shackle you up and handcuff you up and look you right in the eyes and say, you are now my property, if you actually realize what that means, you might have a complete mental breakdown in that moment, right? So what your mind does to prevent a complete psychotic breakdown, it rearranges reality. In this new reality, one day you're going to be free. In this new reality, one day you're going to be on top of the heap. In this new reality, maybe it's being a slave is not so bad, or you did something in a previous life to deserve this, but somehow you're going to work your way out of this. It's only going to be temporary. Is that making sense? All right, need a volunteer to read the next text box there. Thank you so much.
The prisoner comes to truly believe that the captor is their friend, that he will not kill her, that in fact they can help each other get out of this mess. The people on the outside trying to rescue her seem dangerous and not her allies. Outsiders are going to harm the captor who is now her friend. The fact that the hostage taker could care less about her and would kill her in an instant is lost in the process of self-delusion.
Right, and people that do and think things against their best interests have internalized their own oppression. So oftentimes women from the West meet with women from Muslim countries like Saudi Arabia or Kuwait, and they have, you know, women's empowerment formats and talk about women's rights and, you know, trying to find, you know, fairness and equality and preventing marginalization of women and women's, you know, values in society. And so oftentimes women from the West see a woman with a full burqa on, the full burqa, right? And they say, here's the deal, you know, that burqa is a form of oppression, you know. Get rid of your burqa. You can't even vote in your country. You can't even drive a car. You can't even legally ride a bicycle in your country. Please, rise up, get rid of your burqa, and fight for your rights. And 9 times out of 10, the woman in the burqa says what to the woman from the West? I love my burqa. It makes me feel special. I don't need to vote. My husband can vote for me. I don't need to drive a car. My brother can drive a car for me. And I don't want to ride a bicycle. That's unladylike. Is that making sense? So we see the internalization of the oppression. You guys ever seen the program called Jersey Shore? You be honest. Don't lie. You guys have seen one program, one episode, right? So Jersey Shore's got a whole bunch of characters on it, right? One character is named Sammy Sweetheart. So it's a reality television based in, you know, Jersey, and the kids are all college age and drinking and carrying out and acting out sexually. So Sammy Sweetheart has a boyfriend named Ronnie, and she refers to him as a juice-head gorilla, which means he's on steroids, loves to drink and party, right? At some point during one of the seasons, Ronnie was cheating on Sammy so badly and so often it was embarrassing to other girls in the house, right? And he was drinking and always showing up late, and Sammy, the dutiful girlfriend, was always waiting at home for Ronnie to come back from the bar. At some point, true episode, the women in the house wrote a letter to Sammy. I'll just kind of summarize it. Dear Sammy, Ronnie's an idiot. Please leave him and have a wonderful life. We are the girls of the house. Pro-sisterhood. Love you. What should a rational Sammy have done receiving a letter from her female companions that said, hey, Ronnie's a really bad guy? Would have been a healthy female response to that letter. Confronting Ronnie at least, right? Hey, Ronnie, here's the deal. Are you cheating on me? Are you seeing other people? Because if that is true, I will leave you like a heartbeat, right? And what actually happened? She held on to Ronnie even tighter and got mad at all her friends for being up in her business, right? Is that making sense? Okay. Need someone to read the last paragraph down there when it says many addicts. Volunteer, somebody, please. Thank you so much. All right, so let's kind of give you an example of that story. One of these clients I'm working with's got 3 DUIs, and him and his wife are married. Has a history of domestic violence. So he's on probation. 3rd DUI is a felony. He's in big trouble. And so he comes into my office with his wife, and his wife has a black eye. Like, wow, you're on probation. And on top of that, Raj always says to people, I can judge any man by the condition of his woman. What does that mean? I can judge any man by the condition of his woman. If your wife comes into my office with a black eye, I am thoroughly unimpressed with you. You follow my logic? Okay. So he's in there kind of sheepishly looking at me. She's over there, tears in her eyes, and I say, there seems to be some concerns in this relationship. Right? Now, here's what I did not do. Could you imagine if I would have said to the woman, here's the deal. This man is an incredible loser with a felony conviction. You have a 4-year-old kid together. Grab your child and run away from this man and have a wonderful life, because he's still drinking, and if you don't leave him, there's a 400% higher chance your kid's going to become an alcoholic or an addict. Based on what you know about Stockholm Syndrome, if I would have said that out loud, what would have been her reaction towards me? You are the worst therapist ever. You are a complete idiot. My husband is a wonderful man. In this black eye, I said some things to deserve it. I'm going to watch my words more carefully next time, and he's going to go to AA and get sober, and you'll be completely proved wrong. Right? So that's not a very good way of doing therapy. So here's what I said. There seems to be some concerns about your relationship. And they both kind of nod their heads together. Look at the wife. I said, what would a healthy relationship feel like for you? Very reasonable. What would a healthy relationship feel like for you? She kind of looks down and begins to think, well, I would feel loved and I would feel special. I wouldn't feel like I was constantly walking on eggshells worrying about, is he drinking, is he not drinking, is he going to be physical with me? It wouldn't feel like this, okay? Then I say another question. I said, what would a healthy relationship feel like for you? Wow, okay. Well, besides the cherish part, what about having a magic wand? If you could wave a magic wand over your husband, what would be different about him? She begins to think. She begins to have tears in her eyes. Well, go to AA and stop drinking. I know that stuff. I can say that stuff out loud very, very well. I'm articulate. But here's the thing. As she hears herself speak, she learns what she believes. As she hears her own words, she hears her own voice and knows what her solutions are. It's my job to draw that information out. It's essentially motivational interviewing therapy. Is that making sense? Okay, how about the back page of our handout?
Can I ask a question?
Of course you can.
If you're going to say you can judge any man by the condition of his woman, say you can judge any woman by the condition of her.
No, I'm sexist. I don't do that.
Just checking. Sorry, I have issues.
I'm just proving a point. You see my point. It's for illustration purposes. Excellent point.
My mother would
Point well taken.
put you in check so fast.
I'm just having fun up here. Don't shoot the messenger. Backside, please. Good point, though. Somebody backside. Thank you so much.
Sadly, when family and friends call a vulnerable victim, your heroine is intimidated. With alcohol is killing you. You can't see what is happening in your life. The victim/addict who would expect to say, wow, that's true. I need to stop this. Actually begins to embrace their captor/drug even tighter. Even though the drug of choice is destroying them, abusing them, and making them look stupid, they have so entrenched themselves and are in such denial that they begin to believe that the people talking bad about the drug of choice are actually the enemy.
Is that making sense? So I'll give you a story about a kid named Jeremy. His mom and I went to the same high school together, and mom got married and had 2 kids. She married an alcoholic guy. They lasted for about 20 years together, and they got divorced. And so, Jeremy comes into my office. He's got 2 DUIs and 3 MIPs under his belt. He's also a very tough kid. He's an all-state wrestler. He's a welterweight. He actually won a champion fight as an MMA fighter, had a welterweight title belt. And he was pretty much a big deal, 170 pounds in the cage, 180 pounds outside of the cage. So he comes into my office with his mother and his girlfriend. His girlfriend is a little ring card girl. She's at Wayne State University on a full-ride scholarship. His mom, loves the girlfriend. She's very intelligent. She's very serious about health and fitness, doesn't drink, doesn't get high. So Jeremy's in my office, and I got to put a plan together to keep this kid out of a jail cell, right? Trying to encourage him to go to rehab before sentencing. Looks good for court, also gets him clean and sober. So he comes into my office. I go, Jeremy, we have some concerns about your drinking. You got two DUIs under your belt. We're facing another MIP charge. You're facing serious jail time at this point for violating your DUI. And so his girlfriend, Mary, says, can I say something, please? And I'm like, of course, Mary, what do you want to say? She looks at Jeremy right in the eyes. She goes, Jeremy, if you drink again, I will leave you. I had chill up my spine. Like, wow, if you drink again, I will leave you. So with mom in the room and girlfriend in the room and therapist in the room, what should Jeremy's response have been at that point? What would have been a healthy male response to that statement from a loving, caring girlfriend? I'm going to stop drinking. I'm going to try to stop drinking. I'll see what I can do. I'll make adjustments accordingly, right? Something like that. And what did Jeremy actually say out loud? I'm never stunned. I'm almost never stunned. I was stunned this time. He looks at me, goes, that bitch ain't going nowhere. I'm like, no, Jeremy, she's right there. Mom jumps up out of her seat and goes, Jeremy, how dare you disrespect your girlfriend like that? If you drink again, I'm going to kick you out of the house. I'm not going to pay for your attorney. You're going to be on your own. So everyone's crying and screaming. I'm in damage control mode now, right? I go, Jeremy, I'm very concerned about your future. Your father's an alcoholic. You're probably going to be an alcoholic too. 2/3 of all homicide victims have alcohol in their system. Alcohol kills more people than all illegal drugs combined. As I'm talking smack about alcohol, what begins to happen to Jeremy's body language and attitude towards me? He starts puffing up his chest, leaning towards me out of his chair. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm past my prime. This kid's pretty solid. You know what I mean? I don't want to do this right now. And so I'm like, Jeremy, please, it's not a personal attack, but I don't think alcohol is your friend. You follow what I'm saying? Now, in a perfect world, the story would end with Raj's words were so eloquent and clever that Jeremy decided to never drink again. Him and Mary got married and had 5,000 children, and he became a heavyweight champion, right? No. He kept drinking. He lost Mary, went to jail for 6 months. So about 6 months later, I get a phone call from a drunken Jeremy. I answer the phone. I'm like, who is this? I know who it is. It's me, Raj. You got to help me. Sure, what can I do? You got to get Mary back. What happened? She left me. You're kidding me. Didn't she say in my office, if I drink again, if you drink again, she's going to leave you? Yeah. But I didn't think she was serious. I'm like, wow, really? And he goes, you got to help me get her back. So I'm thinking, for a compromise point, here's what I said. Jeremy, if you're willing to go to 90 AA meetings in 90 days, I'll arrange a meeting with you, me, your mom, and Mary to talk about your relationship. And he says, I'm not going to AA. And I said, well, you don't want Mary, do you? Click. See my point? Some people choose the companionship of an intoxicant over the companionship of another human being. Because basically that intimate feeling comes from a chemical rather than another human being, rather than from their mom, rather than from their girlfriend. And it's pretty chilling because when you hear people give an ultimatum, you would think a rational mind would say, of course I'm going to choose mom over heroin. Of course I'm going to choose my wife over alcohol. But the entrenchment can be so severe that the opposite is actually what happens. Is that making sense? Okay. How about the last paragraph there? Need a volunteer, please? Somebody. Thank you, sir. Is that helpful? Is that making sense? So I went through the same way I would do with the client, so I hope it wasn't, not as academic as you guys want it to be, but it was very honest, and it's how I talk and how I feel. So we're going to kind of go with the slides at this point. All right, so what is Stockholm Syndrome? On deeper levels, the state can increase to the point where outsiders are viewed as a threat. Remember, me and Jeremy, I was viewed as a threat. A genuine hostility can develop to the victim towards anyone the perpetrator doesn't like. The perpetrator and victim can help each other get out of this mess. They become the internal dialogue of the victim. This happens also during a substance abuse intervention. When I do an intervention, people get really, really angry at me. Like, you'd be surprised how angry people get when I say, heroin is not your friend. You really want to go to rehab. And a 20-year-old kid with the big gauge earrings says what to me? Blah, blah, blah. F-bomb, F-bomb, right? And I got to go, I know you're very upset right now, but your mom has something that she wants to say to you about your addiction, right? It's a very difficult place to be. People that do and think things against their best interests have internalized their own oppression. We see this in people that vote against their economic best interest, people that glamorize drugs, people that stay in an abusive relationship, and people that defend their abuser, and people that are addicted to drugs. And the comment is, sorry, reality is not optional. So oftentimes you'll see in Stockholm Syndrome with clients that I work with, there's going to be a denial or minimization of what happened to them. What's really disheartening is what's happening at lots of, I'm not going to pick on fraternities, I'll get in trouble for that, but some places at college have higher risks for people to be badly treated, right? And so many of my female clients have had bad experiences at various college campuses. It becomes my job to put them back together again. So I get a lot of clients that are referred to me through the court system. They get an MIP or a marijuana possession charge or their first DUI. They got to see me for an education program. And so when I meet with these young men, right, I say to them, hey, you know, here's a story about a young woman that was at a fraternity just like yours. What's your job there? Oh, I'm the vice president of so-and-so. That's fantastic news. Here's what happened to one of my clients at a party similar to what you're talking about. Oh my God, really? And I go, here's the deal. Your fraternity's name is what? And I write down a piece of paper. And I go, here's what's going to happen. If any female comes into my office and tells me a story about her friend or any friend and something bad happened to them at your fraternity, I will do everything possible to make sure hell comes to meet you. You're responsible now personally for every female at every one of your parties. Oh, I know, I'll make sure it doesn't happen. Look, I'm not sure how much of a difference it's going to make, but it helps me sleep better at night. Is that making sense? So denial, minimization, a woman had a bad thing happen to her. She confided with her father, and the father, being a very dysfunctional idiot, what did he say to his daughter? Well, what were you wearing? Like, seriously, that's what he said to her. Well, what were you wearing? This is the kind of nonsense that we deal with when people get harmed and mistreated. And so we got to get them to understand that nothing that you wear deserves any kind of mistreatment. Is that making sense? And so distraction, they're going to talk about other issues, avoid the trauma issue. That's pretty much commonplace to deal with anxiety. They're going to delay getting help. I don't want to talk about this. Here's the thing with PTSD. A lot of errors are being made, forcing a person to talk about things they don't want to talk about. The reason why I use the cards is oftentimes we can speed things up. I only have so many sessions with a person, and the cards help people get a chance to express themselves without feeling as vulnerable. Also gives them a chance to have visual images cover what they can't say with words. And so when dealing with PTSD and dealing with abuse, I encourage you to go at your client's pace. There'll be an interest in wanting to push. I kind of give an analogy. If you're stirring a pot of soup, right? If you stir too fast, you'll throw the soup out of the pot, right? If you stir too slow, it'll go back on your hand. You got to find just enough momentum with your client to keep things going without doing any damage. Is that making sense? Okay, with regards to divide, they're going to fracture up the family, loved ones that are supporting them through this trauma, people that are against them or blame themselves. What really hurts my heart in particular is the two female clients that had really bad things happen to them at college campuses. When they went to confide with their female friends, what did those female friends say to them? Don't tell anybody about that. You probably deserve that, and they have really good parties. I can't make this up. One more time. Don't tell anybody about that. You probably deserve that, and don't ruin it for us. They have really good parties.
One of my clients who was a teenager was told she had to testify before a college hearing board against the person.
Wow.
Even though that was blatantly not true.
Mm-hmm.
So she was forced to go before this college board
Right.
and testify against this person.
Yeah.
In a seriously traumatized state with no legal
Yeah.
representation or anything.
Adding insult to injury. Yeah. You gotta talk about this stuff. You gotta make a change on this, right? So the healthy questions to ask somebody that's in a possible abusive relationship: what concerns you about your current relationship? What would a healthy relationship feel like? And the magic wand scenario, right? If you had a magic wand, you could wave it over your boyfriend or your husband or your wife or your son, what would be different about him? Allows them to have voice and ownership over their own solution to the problem. Remember, you might have some really good solutions for people's problems, but if they say it out loud, it becomes their solution, and the odds of them acting on that are much higher. Is that making sense? Okay. Now, to the use of interactive cards. The cards are being passed out throughout the area here. Everyone's got a chance to look at the cards. The cards are very helpful. The parts book, I'm going to pass this out too as well. The parts book is a different method of treating. So the author of the book and the person that drew the cards, I told them what I was doing with these cards, and they were very impressed and very excited about that. Said, can we do presentations on this method? I'm like, absolutely, you can. And so they're doing that right now. So I have permission from Sharon Eckstein to share her images, okay? These are all her illustrations. So interactive cards were developed to do parts work. Okay, what's parts work? Originally used as an effective way to give a voice to our emotional states, our mind chatter, internal dialogue, and various subpersonalities in our subconscious, right? The interactive cards were developed to do parts work. The mind is not unitary, is their concept. It consists of multiplicity, various subpersonalities interacting with each other. And basically, it's called like a family systems therapy model, right? Inside of your own internal dialogue. Much like a family is shaped by strong, weak, and various personalities influencing the system, the wise counsel is called the self. It needs to lead and take charge. So the use of interactive cards, the firefighter card is often used to symbolize the part of our personality that puts out the burning fire of our emotional, physical, and psychic pain. It's the go-to person to solve a crisis. That'll be your firefighter card used in their method. However, the firefighter card, the method may be blasting away all feelings or those feelings away with drugs or alcohol, gambling, sexually acting out, or through violence. So here's a new method. Using these cards, we can treat trauma more effectively and more quickly. Some people can't express themselves well with words. We know that's a fact. Everybody learns differently. Everybody expresses things differently. On top of that, visual cards are a safe medium to show what it felt like. If I ask somebody, even with really bad heroin addiction, what did the worst part of your heroin addiction look and feel like? Please pick out 3 cards. It's a lot easier doing that. If I say to somebody, you went through a really bad divorce, please pick out 3 cards that show what the darkest and saddest part of that divorce period was like, what it looked like and felt like for you. Is that making sense? And these visual cards are not static. They are dynamic like songs. They mean something different to each person. They mean what they want them to mean, and they can express that to you once they have the image in their hand. On top of that, these cards can elicit subconscious thoughts and bring about previous memories to the forefront. Because there's so much detail to these cards, oftentimes as they're holding the card and talking about it, they'll begin to notice something very interesting, like a side image, and go, oh my God, that reminds me of this one thing. It allows them to open up. On top of that, these changes are the therapy dynamic, allowing the client to lead the conversation. They can actually begin to lead and feel a bit more empowered in the therapy session. And on top of that, it allows closure and speeds up the process of dealing with deep trauma. So, like I mentioned before, you talked to your client, you mentioned you went through something very difficult, a difficult period in your life. It could be an addiction, a molestation, a rape, a death, a divorce, etc. So the common thing is please pick out 3 or more cards that represent or symbolize and show what that felt like for you. And the cards right now that you're looking at are very commonly pulled out with regards to any kind of abuse. Let's have a look at those cards. You can see why if someone's been through something really bad, they might pick out those cards and say, that's what it looked like. That's what it felt like. Yes?
What ages would you recommend?
So I've only done this with people that are 16 and older. 16. Yeah, so I haven't done anybody younger than 16. And my clients are always 13. I don't know anybody under 13 years of age is my minimum cutoff for therapy for me personally. So, good question. So, with regards to Nikki, what was really therapeutic for her was hearing a male person say to her, I want to formally apologize to you on behalf of those failed individuals that harmed you. You'd be surprised how much traction you get when you give somebody a formal apology. I have some clients that have been mistreated by the criminal justice system and given really crazy sentences for minor things. They've been traumatized by this, both male and female. And when I say to them, you were a victim, you should have never done that much time in jail or in prison, that was completely wrong. I'm sorry you had to go through that. You have an addiction issue. You should have been in rehab for a year, not in a jail cell for a year. It allows people to heal, allows them to feel valued, allows them to feel like what they've been through isn't all for nothing because someone is validating that experience and saying to them that was not right. With regards to the other comments, that should never happen to you. You were a victim, making it very clear that you are not responsible for bad things that happen to you. Look, I live in the real world. I deal with that every day long. I don't know why bad things happen to good people. But that's my everyday practice, right? And so I deal about heroin deaths all the time. I hear about successes as well. But to be honest with you, it's how we handle it and deal with it that can make us better and stronger, allow us to better ourselves overall, become more spiritual, become wiser, become more insightful, and become more empathic. And so you will triumph over this, allows them also to heal. And the best part of your life is yet to come. You haven't peaked yet. Like I told Nikki, that will never happen to you ever again. And that brought tears to her eyes, because just hearing that from my voice allowed her to feel a little bit of a sense of closure, that experience. So if you guys are pulling out these cards and your client pull this card out first, okay, just kind of giving you like anecdotal experience in my life, right? 9 times out of 10, what type of issue would this client have that pulls out this card and says, this is what it felt like for me? Well, I'll show you in a second. Oftentimes, the person that was a hardcore daily alcoholic, that's their card. That's what alcohol dependency looks like and feels like for most people when they go through the cards. Is that making sense? All right, alcohol dependency. Next one, this card, 9 times out of 10, what type of issue does the client that pulls this card have experienced or been through? Take a guess. It's the only card, by the way, in the deck that's entirely in grayscale with no color in it. That's your heroin addict. People that abuse heroin or have been hooked on heroin will tell me that's what it looked like, that's what it felt like in the deepest part of my heroin addiction. Okay, 9 times out of 10, anecdotally, client pulls out this card and says, this is what it looked like, this is what it felt like. Got it. Sex abuse victim, oftentimes molestation, Ptsd, this is what it felt like to be molested, badly raped, and beaten. That card comes out as well. Is that making sense? So that doesn't complete the treatment. It's one thing to talk about what happened to you. We talk about this grieving process, right? So denial, anger, bargaining and yearning, right? Depression and acceptance. A more sophisticated model, I'm not looking for people to accept their trauma. That's good, but it's not great. I want someone to accept their PTSD. I want them to have resolution, taking that bad thing that happened to them and using that psychic energy and making things right or better for themselves or for their family. So I asked them, everyone's got cell phones now with cameras on them, right? And so I don't even ask them to photograph those negative cards. There's no reason for that. That trauma is already inside their mind. What I asked them to do at the end of the 3rd session or end of the 4th session is to pick out 3 or more cards that represent and visualize what do you want your future to look and feel like. And so these are common cards that show this is what it feels like, what I want my future to be like. I haven't peaked yet. The best is yet to come. Those bad things will never happen to me again. And what I tell them to do is you photograph those cards, you put them on your cell phone, and your responsibility is look at them 3 times a day to keep that in your mind. Remember, people have anxiety issues, oftentimes have negative ruminations, have negative internal dialogue. I also tell them, do not say anything to yourself in your head that you would not say to a stranger. Healthy rule of thumb, right? So you aren't going to call yourself names or say, I'm an idiot or I'm stupid. You don't have the right to do that anymore. And you got to focus on these cards because as you can visualize your future, you can begin to make it actionable. Is that making sense? So I mentioned about photographing the cards, visualizing your success, focus on the future, avoid dwelling in the past. You can't live your life looking in a rear view mirror and driving forward. You cannot do that. You got to get people to become future oriented. Ask them to put together short-term goals for their future. They can be travel goals, family goals, relationship goals, academic goals, workout goals. But short-term, middle-term, and long-term goals get people focused towards the future. That future orientation reduces anxiety. And the other comments that tie in here, having a personal mantra. I ask each one of my clients, put together a mantra that you'll say to yourself 100 times a day that can get rid of those bad tapes that are in your mind. I'm a good person. I deserve success. God loves me. I'm special. I don't care what the mantra is, as long as it means something to you and you're willing to implement it. It ties into basic sports psychology, right? Michael Phelps jumps into the pool. I'm coming in 1st place today. I wonder who's coming in 2nd place today. We play to win. And these trials and tribulations of life develop character, insight, wisdom, and strength. When talking to clients, it's also important to build up their own self-esteem and their self-confidence and their self-efficacy. That ties into the mantra, right? You seem to have some pretty good insight at this point after they had the 3 nice positive cards. You seem like you have some good thoughts. Please write them down and create a pep talk letter to yourself. Use your own words to help motivate you through the tough times and keep you on track on your goals. Sometimes when I do the 3 positive cards, people are in a really good mental space. I want to capture that moment. I want to seal that moment and give it back to them, right? So one method to do that is you write a self-addressed stamped envelope to yourself and write a letter in that positive moment. Here's how I feel about myself. Here's how I feel about my trauma. Here's how I feel about my future. They give me that letter, and I put it in an envelope. And I send it to them randomly within 20 to 30 days later. And you'd be surprised when a person receives an envelope with their handwriting on it, in their address, in their name, and they open it up 20, 30 days later, and they read what they had to say in that special moment. It captures that feeling. It's very powerful. Think of it as a mini little time machine. Is that making sense? Thanks for your participation. I hope this was helpful information. And of course, drug-free is the way to go. Fortune favors the bold. And thank you for your time. Any comments or questions? No, it's for the individual to do that, but it gives basic guidelines for what the cards can mean in general setting. But that's more like a family systems therapy kind of model. Yep. Please buy those cards. They're awesome. They help lots of people. Amazon.com, like 15 bucks? Yeah. Amazon sells them. Yes?
Hi, I'm a Western student, and I've actually used the parts book. Do you use that as well? Do you use the parts?
I'm very honest. I've never used their method, but I have read part of the book. Yeah, it's a good method, actually. Yep.
Have you ever had a client who goes through a dissociative experience in therapy, and if so, how do you handle it?
No one's actually actively dissociated, but they have had that look, that mile-away gaze, and my job is to kind of gently bring them back into the moment. And I ask them, what's on your mind right now? What are your thoughts? But no one's actively gone, completely dissociated, like the trance holding it. That hasn't happened to me yet. But my goal would be when a person begins to kind of trance out slowly, is you want to be preemptive at that point. And so you seem to be kind of going somewhere with your mind. What are you thinking about? What are you feeling right now? You want to get them grounded again. Yeah, good question. Yes? Yeah. Absolutely. I had 2 guys that were snipers, one from Afghanistan, one from Iraq, and these cards helped them as well. Absolutely. Especially with the nightmares they have at night, being able to identify those feelings that tie into that, and the guilt and shame. I should have done something different. I should have drove different. I should have been there for my friend. All that guilt ties into that. Yep.
Is it any harder to introduce the cards to older men? Like I have some men in their late 50s and early 60s.
Yeah.
That are dealing with some trauma and some history of substance abuse where they stopped using, but they haven't fully recovered from the guilt and the
Right.
shame and the family dynamic. Very hard to reach.
Yeah.
Because they're not real therapy oriented. They're not, and I'm thinking introducing the cards might be
Yeah.
a difficult thing.
No, actually, with the older males, it hasn't been an issue with me. Surprisingly, the 2 clients that gave me some kind of negative remarks were my 2 borderline girls. They're both borderline personality disorders. And I pull out the cards, they're like, oh, you want to play with my effing mind? You want to get, well, they got really suspicious about the cards. Like I was going to go a little bit, I'm like, these are just cards. They don't mean anything. Let's just talk. And they got really suspicious about the use of the cards, right? So with a personality disorder, it's been an issue, but for non-personality disorder people, it has not been an issue at all, especially for adult males. They kind of find them novel and cool. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, that's a tough one. I lost 2 people, one person recently of a heroin overdose that can't see themselves in a future that's positive. Oftentimes, there's a personality disorder tied into that as well. Our job, to be really honest, our job is to always provide hope. Hope springs eternal. And so when you meet with me, everyone that I see is going to get sober, just a matter of when. Everybody that I see is going to have a wonderful life, just a matter of when. And so that's just my attitude with regards to hope, because remember, as a therapist, any kind of feelings that I have or any speculation about your future becomes your prognosis. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like when I went to Brighton Hospital and people say, there's only a 4% chance of you ever getting sober. That's damaging to people. You never say that. Even if that's true, you don't say that. Somebody else can say that. You are a therapist. You got to build them up with hope. And so in my experience, it's a very difficult thing to fight against, but that's part of our job, is to meet with that resistance and say, how do you even know that? Because people that seem to have that kind of mentality where everything is going to get worse, nothing ever gets better, that's basically a form of those ruminations, and it's a paradigm in their mindset. And that's been programmed into them over a period of time. And we have to kind of slowly chisel away at that over a period of time. And also identify with those people, what was a positive thing that happened throughout this week? Well, nothing. I want to hear about a positive cheeseburger, a positive TV program. You give me something. Because something good happened to you this week. I know it did. So you always draw them back to the positive regardless. Yeah.
What about somebody who is really traumatized, there's traumas that they can't remember their childhood? I mean, there are whole sections that they expect something to happen in my life. Just for something
Right.
to happen. The parents helping them.
Yeah, remember, with repressed memories, to be very careful that we don't actually push them in a position where they've given us the feedback. They see our eyes, we say with our expressions, right? I kind of don't use the cards for that purpose. Yeah, I only use it when they can identify their own traumas and talk about it. Yeah, I wouldn't feel comfortable because I'm not sure if those images might shape a memory that may not have happened. Yeah, but good question. Yeah. Yeah.
Have you ever worked with a couple in which the wife is being emotionally abused and she identifies with her abuser and is kind of enmeshed in an enabling relationship?
Mm-hmm.
And she says, but I love him, I can never leave him. And there's no physical abuse, but
Right.
certainly emotional abuse, very controlling,
Right.
anger, threats,
Mm-hmm.
calling names, things like that.
Yeah.
What did you intervene?
Well, I mean, in that case, we talk about what concerns you about the relationship. Remember, if you're doing any kind of couples therapy, you can shape people to be together. You tell a wife in front of her husband, tell me 10 things you like about your husband right now. All of a sudden, as she begins saying those things, she begins to feel good about him. In that case, remember, you have to be very careful. If I say, give me 10 things that concerns you about your husband, would be the first direction I would go in. But you have to be careful because you're opening up that big mess now, right?
Yes, and you don't know if she's honest in the therapy session.
Right.
She's going to pay the price
Right.
when they get home.
Exactly. Yeah, that's very difficult. Very difficult. And remember, it's a form of Stockholm Syndrome, too. You're talking about two individuals that have a vested interest in that operation, right? It's meeting people's needs. Something about him meets her needs, and something about her meets his needs. When you decide to go diving into that, there's going to be blowback on you as well. So, I mean, it comes to the harm reduction model. Find out what's really the main issues and only camp on those. Leave the other ones alone. So giving her, if she's always with him, you want to give her some autonomy and say, I want you to pick out 2 hobbies and interests that you might have and do that outside of the house. That would be a starting point. To get her to develop her own self-identity. Oh yeah, you'd have to. And he might get really upset with that idea. You got to be ready with a really quick retort. Don't you want your wife to be happy? Don't you want her to have high self-confidence and high self-esteem and high self-efficacy? Why would you want to hold her back from reaching her full potential using motivational interviewing therapy on him? Yep.
With both parents and couples, I'm very big on written contracts that are very minimalistic,
Mm-hmm.
but I put it in the scope of communication. And I said, people don't always remember what they agreed to.
Mm-hmm.
So how about if we write a couple of contracts, and one of the first things is issues discussed in session, stay in session.
Yeah.
You don't go home and revisit them. And that I try to do to keep
Yeah.
the
The rules of engagement. Yeah, here are the rules of engagement.
And,
Yep.
but I do a lot of
Yeah.
those kind of situations.
That would be helpful for sure.
And it's really threatening to a lot of people, but I do it because, like I said, we forget, or you get into those silly power struggles, and this makes it easier for everyone.
Yeah.
And that might help with those kind of emotional abusive.
I agree. Any other comments or questions? All right, if you guys get really bored, I have a website called serenityhelp.com, and it has my Ask the Therapist talk show on there. I did a TED Talk at U of M 3 weeks ago. My Addiction 101 is on there as well. So all kinds of free audio and video on serenityhelp.com for your clients. If they want to have a basic Addiction 101 knowledge, it's really good there. I also have a podcast too, all kinds of audio, video, and I also have a song as well, anti-addiction song called Fortune Favors the Bold. So any comments or questions? It's called serenityhelp.com. You go to that original slide, I think. Yeah.
On the bottom of our report.
Yeah, serenityhelp.com. I have a local TV talk show called Ask the Therapist. That's the website right there. Yes?
Is anything captioned for the deaf and hard of hearing?
I apologize, no. Yeah. No. All right. Yes? Thank you for mentioning that. I forgot about that completely. So you guys saw the ego defense mechanism sheet, right? Has a wonderful full-color picture that costs 40 cents, by the way. That full-color picture, right, illustrates the idea behind anxiety. And anxiety drives PTSD. Remember, anxiety left untreated will morph into depression, so anxiety ties into depression as well. And so when dealing with anxiety, people go into defense mechanisms, right? And some of them are considered level 1s, level 2s, level 3s, level 4s. It's very important to get clients to understand if you're using level 1 defense mechanisms, that's not very clever. That's not sophisticated. Let's prove a point. You guys know who Dennis Rodman is, right? Was married to Carmen Electra, right? Talking about psychotic denial. One day, Carmen Electra comes home, and Dennis Rodman is in bed naked with 2 girls. And what did Rodman say to Carmen Electra when Carmen goes, "What are you doing in bed with those girls?" And Dennis Rodman said what? "Carmen, there's no girls here. What are you talking about? You're crazy." And in the interview, Carmen said, "I thought he was actually right, and I was losing my mind." That's called psychotic denial, right? So that's a level 1 defense mechanism. So as you go through the handout, the level 4s are the healthy defense mechanisms. You want to steer your clients into using level 4 defense mechanisms in handling and dealing with their anxiety. And that includes altruism. That also includes my favorite, sublimation. My close friend died of a heroin overdose, so I became an addiction killer. I sublimate my anxiety. When people die in addiction, my job is to get 10 people sober, get a 10-to-1 kill ratio. That's how you win a war. So please use the handout and get your clients to identify with level 4 defense mechanisms and incorporate those in their life and in their cognitive schema. Excellent. Thank you for mentioning that, by the way. All right. Any other comments or questions? Thank you for your time.